If you stopped texting first, stopped explaining yourself, stopped trying to fix the distance, and suddenly felt a strange silence come over the whole connection, that silence was not empty. It was full of reaction. And if part of you still feels confused by that, if part of you keeps thinking, why did everything shift the moment I stopped trying? You are not imagining it. You are noticing the truth. What hurts so much in these dynamics is not just rejection. It is the mental exhaustion. It is the way you were trained to believe that if you just said it better, loved harder, stayed calmer, gave more, understood more, waited longer, something would finally settle. But instead, the more effort you gave, the more unstable it became. And the day you stopped chasing her, the emotional system changed. That matters because it tells you something important. You were not the problem that needed to be solved. The relationship was being held together by your pursuit. Your effort was acting like emotional fuel. Your overthinking was covering the cracks. Your empathy was carrying a dynamic that was never balanced to begin with. When a narcissistic woman feels you pulling your energy back, she often does not react in loud, obvious ways at first. A lot of what happens is quiet, subtle, psychological. And that is why people miss it. They think nothing is happening because there is no dramatic scene. But inside the dynamic, something very real is taking place. She is losing access to the role you were playing for her. That role was not love in the healthy sense. It was regulation, attention, reassurance, control, confirmation. You were helping stabilize her internal world without even realizing it. So when you stop chasing, she is forced to confront something she has spent a long time avoiding. The fact that her power over you is no longer automatic. The first silent thing she does is notice immediately, even if she pretends she does not. People who rely on emotional control are highly sensitive to shifts in attention. She may have seemed distracted, distant, even careless when you were available, but that does not mean she was unaware. In many cases, she was tracking your energy very closely. She knew when you were more eager. She knew when you were hurt. She knew when you were trying to reconnect. So when that effort stops, she feels it fast. This is important because many people assume if she really noticed me, she would have acted like she cared. But noticing and caring are not the same. She may notice because she is losing influence, not because she is suddenly becoming emotionally honest. And that difference can save you a lot of pain. Her awareness of your withdrawal does not automatically mean deep love. Sometimes it means the control pattern has been interrupted, and she is deciding how to respond. The second silent thing she does is test whether the loss of control is real. She may not come toward you directly. Instead, she may go colder, more distant, less available. She may delay a response even longer than before. She may act like your absence does not matter. This is often not indifference. It is a test. She wants to see if the old conditioning still works. She wants to know whether you will panic, explain, reach out, apologize, or resume chasing the moment she creates more uncertainty. Psychologically, this makes sense in a manipulative dynamic. Control is often maintained through intermittent reinforcement. Warmth appears, then disappears. Closeness is offered, then withheld. You are kept in confusion, and confusion increases attachment because your mind keeps searching for resolution. So when you stop chasing, she may respond by increasing the distance, hoping the discomfort will pull you back into pursuit. And if you were on the receiving end of this for a long time, it affected you more deeply than you may realize. It taught your nervous system to interpret inconsistency as something to fix. It made you believe that emotional stability depended on your performance. It made you hyper-aware of tone, timing, and tiny changes in behavior. That is not because you were weak. It is because your mind was adapting to an unstable environment. The third silent thing she does is begin rewriting the story in her own mind. This can happen without you hearing a word of it at first. The moment you stop chasing, she may privately frame you as the one who became distant, the one who changed, the one who failed to show up. That protects her from having to face the real issue, which is that the connection depended too heavily on your effort and too little on mutual responsibility. A narcissistic personality structure often protects itself through distortion. If she acknowledged that you were exhausted from carrying the emotional weight, she would have to face shame, accountability, or vulnerability. That may feel intolerable to her. So instead, she may unconsciously shift the story. Now you are cold. Now you are selfish. Now you are not who she thought you were. This does not mean the story is true. It means the ego is trying to preserve itself. This part hurts because it can make you question everything. You may think, maybe I did abandon her. Maybe I really am too much or not enough. But stepping back from manipulation is not cruelty. Refusing to keep proving your worth is not abandonment. Ending the cycle of overfunctioning is not failure. It is the beginning of clarity. The fourth silent thing she does is look for replacement attention, or at least create the appearance of it. Sometimes this happens quickly. Sometimes it was already being prepared before you stepped back. She may become more active socially, suddenly more visible online, more flirtatious, more polished, more publicly unbothered. She may not directly tell you she has moved on, but she may make sure the possibility reaches you. Why does this happen? Because admiration, attention, and emotional reactions can function like supply. If one source becomes less available, another source may be activated to restore a sense of worth or control. It is not always about genuine connection. Often it is about avoiding inner emptiness and proving, especially to herself, that she is still desired and still in command of the emotional field around her. For you, this can be deeply destabilizing. You may feel replaced, erased, or reduced to something disposable. But what you are usually seeing is not healthy ease. It is compensation. It is an attempt to outrun discomfort. People who are truly secure do not need to perform detachment the moment someone stops over-investing in them. That urgency tells a story of its own. The fifth silent thing she does is watch. Even if she withdraws, even if she appears proud or unreachable, it does not always mean she has emotionally let go. In many cases, she watches from a distance. She checks whether you are reacting. She looks for signs that you miss her, that you are breaking, that you are available to re-engage. This might happen through social media, mutual contacts, vague messages, or quiet reappearances that seem casual, but are not casual at all. This matters because many people misread that silence as closure. But silence in a narcissistic dynamic is often strategic. It can be a waiting period, a space where she measures whether your boundary is real. If she senses that you are still emotionally hooked, even without direct contact, she may feel reassured that the bond is still active on her terms. And this is where many people get pulled back in. Not because they are foolish, but because the contact is usually subtle. A like, a short message, a memory. A question that sounds innocent. Something just enough to reopen the loop without ever addressing the original harm. If you do not understand the pattern, you can mistake access for care. But someone re-entering your space is not the same as someone taking responsibility. The sixth silent thing she does is act as if she is the calm one now. This can be one of the most psychologically confusing shifts. When you were chasing, you were probably framed as too emotional, too intense, too reactive. But when you step back, she may suddenly appear centered, composed, even mature. She may act like she has accepted everything peacefully, while you are left carrying the emotional aftermath. This is often part of image management. If she can look unshaken, then your pain becomes easier to dismiss. It also helps her avoid facing the instability underneath. But external calm and inner honesty are not the same thing. Some people look calm because they are regulated. Others look calm because they have disconnected from empathy, avoided accountability, or shifted quickly into self-protection. The effect on you is subtle but powerful. You may start thinking, maybe she handled this better than I did. Maybe I was the unstable one. But healing rarely looks polished in the beginning. Real healing can look like confusion, grief, fatigue, anger, and deep reflection. Performing indifference is easy. Processing truth is harder. So do not judge your recovery by how composed someone else appears. The seventh silent thing she does is feel the injury of not being chased, even if she never admits it. That injury may show up as irritation, contempt, sudden outreach, passive-aggressive comments, or a renewed attempt to pull you back into the old role. Because at the deepest level, what changed was not just contact. What changed was the emotional arrangement. You stopped organizing yourself around her reactions. You stopped auditioning for basic reciprocity. You stopped giving your energy away to earn moments of peace. That kind of shift can feel threatening to someone who built the dynamic around imbalance. Not because you harmed her, but because you interrupted the pattern. And when people lose access to a familiar source of control, they often reveal who they really are. Not always through shouting, sometimes through coldness, through rewriting, through image management, through quiet attempts to re-hook you. This is why the day you stop chasing is so revealing. It exposes what the relationship was actually feeding on. If your absence leads to reflection, care, accountability, and honest communication, that tells you one thing. If your absence leads to tests, distortions, performance, and subtle punishments, that tells you something else. And this is the part I want you to hold on to. The pain you felt in that relationship was not proof that you loved wrong. It was often proof that you were trying to create safety in a place where safety was not being mutually built. You were not difficult for wanting consistency. You were not needy for wanting clarity. You were not too much for wanting the relationship to make emotional sense. Many people who leave these dynamics still carry the belief that if they had been calmer, smarter, less sensitive, more patient, more confident, things would have stabilized. But manipulation survives by making you study yourself instead of studying the pattern. It keeps your attention turned inward in a blaming way, while the real issue stays hidden. The real issue was the imbalance, the one-sidedness, the way your emotional labor was treated as normal while your needs were treated as pressure. Awareness starts when you stop asking, "How do I get her to understand me?" and begin asking, "Why was I doing all the understanding?" It starts when you notice how often you are managing both your feelings and hers. It starts when you realize that peace kept requiring you to betray yourself a little more each time. That awareness does not mean bitterness. It means accuracy. And accuracy is healing. Because once you see the pattern clearly, you stop personalizing every cold shift, every mixed signal, every withdrawal, every vague return. You stop turning someone else's dysfunction into a verdict on your worth. Then, boundaries begin to make sense. Not as punishment, not as a game, not as a way to win, but as a form of truth. A boundary says, "I am no longer available for a dynamic that survives on my confusion." A boundary says, "I do not need to chase clarity from someone committed to keeping me uncertain." A boundary says, "My peace is not negotiable." Calm detachment is part of this too. And calm detachment does not mean you feel nothing. It means you stop giving every emotional reaction the power to become action. You may still miss her. You may still replay conversations. You may still feel the pull to explain yourself one more time. But healing begins when you no longer obey every impulse created by the bond. You let the feeling pass without handing it your future. That is self-respect in practice. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. You stop volunteering for roles that reduce you. You stop proving what should have been visible. You stop trying to earn humane treatment from someone who only values what they can control. And over time, something very quiet but very powerful happens. The fog begins to lift. You start sleeping a little better. Your thoughts become less obsessive. The constant urge to decode her softens. You begin to trust your own perception again. You remember what it feels like to live without waiting for someone's mood to define the day. That is the beginning of peace. Not because the past suddenly makes sense in a satisfying way, but because you no longer need it to. You understand enough. You see the pattern. You see your part, not as guilt, but as something to protect with more wisdom now. You gave too much where reciprocity was too weak. You ignored too much because hope was stronger than evidence. And now, you do not have to do that anymore. So if you stopped chasing her and everything in the dynamic shifted, let that teach you what words never fully explained. Let it show you how much of the connection depended on your pursuit. Let it remind you that your exhaustion was information. Let it confirm that your confusion had a cause. You were not crazy. You were responding to contradiction. You were not failing. You were carrying too much. And you do not have to keep carrying it. The strongest thing you can do now is stay close to reality. Not the fantasy of who she could be. Not the version of the story that blames you for everything. Reality. The dynamic was hurting you. Your chasing was feeding it. Your withdrawal revealed it. And your healing will come from honoring what that truth exposed. peace does return. Slowly, then more fully. Your mind clears, your body settles. Your self-respect comes back in pieces and then all at once. One day you realize you are no longer waiting to be chosen by someone who only felt powerful when you were chasing. You have already chosen yourself. And that is where the real freedom begins.